We have our next speaker, who is Miss Annie Holmes, co-founder of Elevated Levels, to share her insights on the topic, Look Who's Talking, going beyond communication and leveraging preliminary data for technology-driven community empowerment. Let's give it up for Annie. In the world. Thank you all so much. I ask you all to allow me to sit and stand as I might need to due to my ability needs as I go through this presentation with you all. So I am going to share with you data that only I have. And I'll tell you why later. So as an educator, I got to have our agenda, right? We got to know what we're going to talk about today so that make sure we hit all of our target areas. So we'll do some introduction. I'll talk to you about the research, some preliminary findings that I think are going to be really interesting and innovative for you all. And this is all coming from the adult learning space. So I ask that you take this learning journey with me for the next 40 minutes, and we are going to engage because I am not just going to sit here and talk to you for 40 minutes because that's boring to me. So we are going to have some fun today. This is me. I just wanted to give you a bit of background about me as to why am I qualified to sit in front of you and have this conversation today. I am a girl from Newark, New Jersey, and I said it right. It's Newark, New Jersey, Newark, Delaware. I said it a bit different. But my parents were blue collar, high school graduates, did not go to college, but they pushed for my education and they sacrificed for my education to the point that my K to 12 education was all private. I went to a private Christian school, K to 8, and then went to public school. I was at a girls private Catholic college preparatory school for high school. But then when it was finally my choice to go where I wanted to go, I went to a public institution. So I went to Temple University. Now I tell folks the reason I went was because Bill Cosby always had the Temple flag. He was always wearing a Temple sweater. He always had a Temple hat when you watched the Cosby Show. So at 12 years old, I told my father I was going to Temple University, and I did. I then got married, and we ended up at Penn State University. My husband said, oh, I'll just get a master's. And I was like, okay, I'll just get a master's too. He got his master's, we stayed. I got my master's, we stayed. I got another master's, we stayed. I started working on my doctorate, and they said, Annie, if you take any more classes, we don't have any more for you to take. Go, be free, and fly. And that's what I did. I became a master of learning. And I took my career at that point, and this is when I became the first chief equity officer, inaugural chief equity officer at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. My process for the work that I have done, because I have been a chief diversity officer, chief equity officer, whatever title you want to give it, I have had to be an influencer. It's in the job title. I have had to be someone who could communicate across differences. It's in my job title. I have had to learn every division and how it operates and the financial flow into those divisions of the organizations that I either consulted with or worked for. Why? Because I had to understand it if I was going to make the organization healthier. And the organizational health work was done through DEI. So I became an executive strategist. That's what I realized I was doing. I was really an executive strategist because then I started to be pulled to do more than just what we would consider in the DEI scope of work. So we made sure to build up that foundation, right? Like you build a house, you have a foundation, but then you also have to make sure you have an intentional strategy. If you don't have an intentional strategy about how you're moving forward, then your impact could actually have a harmful impact on those unintendedly. So let's go a little bit further because we're all expert learners, right? Let me tell you why we're all expert learners. Throughout, there's so much research. You could look at it from in business literature. You could look at it in adult education literature. You could look at it in workplace development literature. This study, I found it really interesting that McCrindle looked at all of the generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta, coming up and how they engage across generations with technology. So I specifically want to point out for you all, in Gen Beta, those are the folks, I don't even think they've been born yet, because my baby who told me about equitable hacking is a Gen Alpha. So when we think about the voices of those who are coming up and are already using the devices, they're already using the internet, they're already accessing the information, we have an opportunity to create the world's largest learning management system for K through 12 education. Why? Because our education isn't even our education system. Our education system was built off of other educational systems. Germany, we still have folks who travel to Germany, who travel to the UK to learn about their educational systems to bring them back here. So now I want to bring it back to us, learning styles. Does anyone in here know what their learning style is, or if they have multiple? Okay, we have one person who knows. Anyone else? 2, 3, a few. I think as you're looking at them, you're like, yeah, maybe. Was there ever an opportunity for you to explore different learning styles as you were growing up? Yes, yes, no, yes. And I saw yeses and nos across perceived diverse differences. So what we need to understand is this is not happening in our K-12 education system. And I know some folks are going to see this on Zoom and they're going to say, Annie, your entire career was within the U.S. education system. And I know what works and I know what does not. So what I then did was convinced my husband, who's upstairs being busy in a meeting, to allow me to pull all of our kids out of the systems and to create a learning environment in our home for them. Now, this was not a COVID situation. This was post-COVID. So this was schools are open back up, kids are going back into schools, right? So they're getting the socialization, they're back in, they can mask, they don't have to mask, there's contact tracing. All of the things were being done, except no one was acknowledging to the children, we have all been traumatized, we are in this together, and we're all gonna heal together. So what happened? You see my little baby right there? Last year in September when school started, I get a call. Lincoln was cutting his hair out in his chair because he was having an anxiety attack. Never had anxiety. Why does he have anxiety? The anxiety of having to fit into a situation or a context that did not feel comfortable for him or did not aid in his learning literally caused him to have anxiety. So what we decided to do as we built out our elevated levels, we're focusing on the social determinants of health. That's at the core of what we're really doing. We want to make sure that there's access for education, for healthcare, for neighborhood, affordable healthcare, social and community context, as well as economic stability. So this is actually a video I took of Lincoln. Lincoln is 9 years old and is just 2 months ago. Lincoln, if you ask him, what's your favorite game to play? He will then, because we teach critical thinking in our home, he will then ask you, well, what do you mean to play? Because I like to play different games for different reasons. For instance, there are certain games I just like to enjoy to play. Then there are other games I like to break. I can tell you those games that I love to break. So in this video, Lincoln is learning to play. This is his second day learning to play Pizza Tower, which is a STEAM game online for kids. He had in 3 days, gotten the exceptional level, like whatever the highest level is in this game. I'm not a technology person, so that's why you're getting the learner talk from me. When we started to talk about technology and what he really enjoyed, it's like, do you want to make games? Do you want to, like, just really just asking him questions? Come to find out, he's very interested in ethical hacking. He's 9. So, because I had the understanding and the knowledge to have the conversation with the 9-year-old, to follow his dream, to then understand what is the pathway to get him to ethical hacking, I can now tap into resources. Not everyone has the ability or the access to those resources. So we want to make sure that we are providing that access. So that's my Gen Alpha baby. But these are my Gen Zers. Now these are the 2 dudes that you should have up here doing a keynote. Trey is the blonde on the left. He is my oldest. He is 19. He will be 20 in September. On the right, the tallest, that's Jaden. And these are actual quotes from my children. The internet is the worst thing that happened to our generation. What do you mean by that, boys? Well, so much information came at us so fast, and it's still coming at us so fast, we never learned how to take it in and pace ourselves. I'm a Gen Xer. My phone is over there somewhere. It might get left over there somewhere. My children will never lose their phones. They are going to have them in their hand or in their pocket, right? So having those intergenerational conversations have also been important and invaluable. And this is not the good data that I'm going to give to y'all. So when we dug into that, they said it was just the swiftness, the way the information was coming. It was too much. Then they said, I've learned more from you, Mom and Dad, and the internet than I ever did from school, because then once we learned from them that it was too much and it was causing them anxiety, that's when we were able to step in and help them to learn how to manage it. Once they learned how to manage it, we said information, remember, the information that you said is always coming towards you, it's right in your hand. So what do you need to know? What do you need to learn? Who do you need to get in contact with so that you can learn from them? Peer-to-peer relationships, right? And then they said, I wish more people had the opportunity to focus on learning like we do at home. I feel much more prepared for the world because we focus on learning. We don't focus on education. We don't focus on school. Now, our oldest, he is enrolled in college online, but he's doing it his way because now, thankfully, our local college has hybrid programs, and they're making sure that they meet the needs of our local community college students. Jaden is enrolled in another school online because he's a performer. He's a dancer. Is Preeti here? Preeti is performing at the World Cultural Festival in DC, September 29th through October 1st. And we found out that yesterday, our son is also performing at the World Cultural Festival. So if you're in DC, September 29th through October 1st, you'll get to see Preeti and me and my family as well. But what we've learned is once we start to take away the core or the root of what the problem is, technology stepped in and actually helped our family engage in learning in very different ways. So let's dive into the research that I want to tell you about. I'm excited to tell you about it. You want to know why I'm excited to tell you about it? Because it's my dissertation research. And I'm the only one that gets to be excited about my dissertation research. Nobody is excited about it but me. So now you're going to get me really, really excited because this is my research. So I get to be excited about it. Okay, so this is preliminary. I am ABD, so I have not finished my doctorate as of yet, but all coursework is done and my proposal is done. And as you can see here, I've already collected some data. So I wanted to be very, very careful here to ensure that I give you as little information as possible so that you are not able to trace my participants. So I did do a qualitative study. I believe that in technology, in the internet space, in the data space, we need to lean more on qualitative analysis. We actually need to lean more on mixed methodology, in my opinion. But I did a qualitative study. I wanted to learn how did people of color, staff of color, learn to navigate a predominantly white institution, which was their workplace. I spoke to 9 staff of color who were working full-time at this organization, across the board, as far as whether they were first generation person of color or not. Interviews were conducted in person over the course of 2 days during fall 2019. So please note this was pre-COVID, but I will tell you, I don't think anything has changed. Each interview occurred between about 15 minutes to 1 hour. Some folks were pretty right to it, and then other folks were more invested kind of in the work that I was doing. And then interviews consisted of 6 questions about how they learned to navigate a predominantly white workspace. The context that I set for my dissertation is intersectionality. So I know we've all been hearing about CRT. Can someone just yell out, what does CRT actually mean? Anyone? Now who knows the answer? Critical race theory. It is not a curriculum. Theories are developed in academia. Academic folks have these conversations. How do I know? Because I was one of the folks having the conversations. And then we try to figure out how to go into communities and bring that knowledge into communities. Here's where Annie then had a problem. Because if you think that you can develop the answer to my problem without having a conversation with me first, it's not going to fix my problem because you don't know me. So that's why I lean on intersectionality, because what you see is not all that you get. And it's very important to recognize how people use the internet, the accessibility they have. Accessibility is the biggest issue right now, not just in the US, but globally when it comes to high quality learning to all ages, and then access to opportunities after that. So Paulo Freire, I also build off of his work. His work actually helped. The civil rights movement was built off of Paulo Freire's work. So Paulo Freire he's from, was from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And what he recognized was in order for people to, I spoke about this yesterday, right? In order for people to understand the systems, they have to come together in community and learn them to then understand how they're going to either create other pathways or engage within the system. Now, what I love about Paulo Freire's work is he says you have to be careful. He wrote a book, The Oppressed Becomes the Oppressor. You have to be careful because in the power exchange, oftentimes folks lose touch of those conversations, those communities, and then we don't have those opportunities to have real talk. So the tenure of staff, they range from about 5 years to about 20-something years on staff. There were multiple organizational levels because as we know within organizations, you often see your diversity at the lower pay grades in organizations rather than at the leadership level. So I wanted to make sure that I had a good range within the organizational level. And as you can see, I did take some demographic information. I do have italicized at the bottom white supremacy ideology tenets. That is what I'm currently doing in my dissertation. In my chapter 5 actually, is breaking down and aligning what it would look like to provide the framework that I'm offering and align it with, and if you put it alongside of white supremacy ideology, could we build a system that could actually, through learning, take out white supremacy ideology? Please hear my words correctly. Words mean things. Words mean things. I did not say take out white supremacists. Words mean things. I said take out white supremacy ideology and shifting our thinking. I want to make sure I say that because it's the internet and it lives forever, don't it? Okay, so just really quick, here's the takeaway I really want to give to you all, the preliminary findings. The BIPOC community members learn more about navigating the workplace through non-formal learning environments. None of them, they all stated that the organizational learning and development courses were of no value to them. Why? Because I could go on LinkedIn and do Coursera. I can go, right? Like, access was becoming, you could sit at your desk and do what, learn things. But the assumption from a learning and development team that this is what this group of people need to learn without engaging them, it could get tricky. It makes the process longer, but I guarantee you it works. How do I know? Because I've done it at 3 organizations. So the education system is institutionalized, it's intentional, and it's planned. Look at when it was established, back in the 1700s. Where would I have been back in the 1700s? Where would most of you have been back in the 1700s? Because if you were not a male child coming from a rich family, male white child, Christian, coming from a rich family, you were not getting an education. That's the shift back we're starting to see. What I'm saying is, we could bypass the system, create non-formal learning in organizations through learning organization theoretical frameworks, create communities of practice, and the non-formal learning mostly leads to qualifications that are not recognized as formal qualifications by the relevant national education authorities, or to no qualifications at all. So it's not even valued. Non-formal learning isn't even valued by organizations. But how are you going to diversify? How are you going to listen? How are you going to turn things up? So here's your chance. How can technology support in-person community building to foster all learning styles with non-formal learning context? So let's take a look ahead. Because one of the things that I'm concerned about is we're so siloed. I keep forgetting the name of the movie. What's the movie where everybody was overweight and like it was iRobot? I think it was iRobot, where everybody just was in their own robot and everyone was overweight. Nobody really had relationships and everybody just watched TV all the time. And that was a very lonely life in that cartoon. WALL-E, yes. I like WALL-E, but I want to be able to actually come in community with WALL-E, right? So here are the lessons learned. One word, words mean things, right? I said that. Words mean things. Be intentional about the words that you choose when you're talking about learning, when you're talking about education, when you're talking about schooling. All 3 mean something very different, even at all age levels. Education is a system and learning is a process. Learning happens all our lives. I literally have a degree in early childhood and elementary education, a degree in college student affairs, a degree in higher education, and a degree in adult education. So I understand learning and development through the life cycle. Trust is a must. Community members must prioritize the community in order to build trust and gain impact. When you are building your tools, if you are saying, okay, let's beta test it, let's send it out, we had our people do what we needed to do, let's beta test it, and you had no one at the table from the community, it will fail. There are organizations such as mine that are those intermediaries who are bringing the work to the communities and the opportunity for communities to build for what they need. Learning is internal and external. So there are times where you need to sit and process. You may need to sit and think, right? We call those introverts. The introverts who need to kind of go back and reflect and take things in versus your extroverts who get energized by hearing from others and learning from others. So input equals context making, which equals asking clarifying questions, which equals planning, which equals action. So there's more to learn. We need in-depth understanding of the impact non-formal learning has in learning organizations. So when you start to shift, and as you all are creating your companies, look at yourselves. I encourage you to look at yourselves as a learning organization. The literature out there is so helpful, and there's so much qualitative data that you could benefit from if you saw the work that you were doing through that lens. Now, if you need somebody to help you do that, I can help you do that. Here's how you can get in touch with me. We can definitely just talk. I love to brainstorm, even if you just need a thought partner to kind of talk some things through. But we've got to innovate in the learning space. It is critical for us right now to innovate in the learning space. We are seeing the need to bring children together so that they can continue to socialize, but they are building together. And so how do we continue to help them through the internet build together? Any questions?
Thank you for that presentation, really eye-opening. What are some things we can do to help, right, from the audience? What are some, like, one or two things that we should be thinking about?
In regards to what context?
Making more, inclusive spaces and creating those sort of learning environments. You talked about, how to create that ability to work together.
So that's a difficult question to answer. I would say on a personal level, not talking from an organizational health level, but just personally recognizing, I'll give you an example. There was some bad news that happened in one of my offices. As the news came out, there were some staff who were really emotional and they were crying. There were other staff that were like, okay, let me just go back to work. And then there were other staff that were like, okay, what are we gonna have for lunch? Like, they were just giddy. The staff who were crying demonized the staff who wanted to go to lunch because they felt that they were not taking the time to mourn what was happening in the organization. We cannot go and control how other people respond or react because our response mechanisms, our triggers, that's how we were culturally programmed. So I'll just say it was a group of Black women who were laughing and who were, okay, well, let's go have some lunch, let's go breathe, like, let's take a moment to just enjoy life. And they were demonized for that. So what I would say is, in every moment, when you can, if you can't be the person to stop the negative behavior, be the person who comes alongside of the person as an ally or an accomplice. You're welcome. And we could do that just through simple communication, having conversations. I would say I would discourage trying to find similarities with folks and then go from there. Just start talking about who you are. The similarities will come up, the connectivities will come up, and the differences will come up. And then differences will make the relationship even stronger. So that's just on a personal level. But from an organizational level, you've got to put people before processes. You've got to put people before policies. We've got to make sure that people, one of the things that I did at one of my organizations is I actually had a task force look through our employee handbook. They degendered it, and they also looked at it from a DEI space. And they made sure that the handbook, from then on, there was no he, she language. There was, we had looked at the dress code because we did have a staff member who was transitioning. And so we wanted to make sure that our employee handbook was up to date so that folks could feel comfortable. I didn't like using the word, and I oversaw HR, I didn't like using the word fit. Is this person a good fit for our organization? What does that mean? Because I don't fit in any box that any of you could create for me. I don't fit in the box that I created for myself. This is me busting out of that box now. So I think once we can encourage innovation, sharing of information, communication, and not, well, let's keep this close, right? The privacy folks, I love that panel. Let's not keep it so close to the chest that we forget to include the folks who are going to benefit the most from this. And there's so much out there with ed tech and fintech and ways that we can really impact communities through a regional and place-based strategy. Thank you, Priti. Any other questions? Can I take his one more? I got like 40 seconds. Okay. My quick response to that, that's twofold. First of all, we need young Black and brown bodies behind helping to create the AI, helping to create the blockchain, helping to create the cybersecurity. We need their lenses. They have the interest, the ingenuity, the creativity. They may need some technical training, but that is there, and that voice needs to be there so that when the users are using it, then they see themselves in it, right? That's the representation. There's also an opportunity with AI and education where you could have personalized learning tracks, and AI could help to identify your track and when you're ready to progress. Or signal, this person may need some assistance, we've noticed some things, and be able to connect to other resources that are part of the learning system. So I think AI actually could be beneficial. My suggestion is bring diversity behind it so that we can help to inform it, like an R&D kind of thing, but through the whole entire process, not just during R&D. Our voices matter. That's why I wore this shirt. I have a voice. My voice matters. Okay, the red light is blinking, so that means I'm done. Thank you all so much for allowing me to come up and share just an inkling of my life and an inkling of my dissertation. I'll be excited when it's finally done and you all get to see the full glory of my work. Thank you all so much.